My home office has been an amazing place to work in. Over the past few years, I've been progressively updating it based on my changing needs as a creative professional. Recently, big changes have happened. I quit my job and have gone on my own. Because of that, I thought it would be nice to refresh my space for the new endeavors ahead. Hello, I'm Matthew Encina, and in this video, I'll take you through the process of updating my main setup of my home office. Before I begin, I want to thank Benjamin Moore for sponsoring this video and making this possible. This video is part of an ongoing office update series. If you haven't seen the other episodes yet, I'll link them in the description below for you to check out. Stick around till the end to get a preview of what's coming up next. The first part of the project was to plan the layout of my office based on my needs. I started by getting the measurements of my room, assessing my workflow needs, and sketching potential layout configurations. Then I built my room in Cinema 4D to get a better sense of volume and what the office would feel like if I moved things around. This design process is something I always go through when I create a new space and is based on 3 principles: function, flow, and familiarity. I made a whole video about my design and organization process, which I'll link to in the description. Once I settled on a general direction, I started to explore materials, colors, and specific solutions for my needs. As much as I liked having a dark accent wall, I wanted to lighten things up and go for a softer look. I went to my local paint shop and picked up some Benjamin Moore swatches and continued to go through more options on their website. Their site was incredibly helpful to explore their catalog of over 3,500 colors. While that sounds like a daunting amount to sort through, the process was very simple. I chose a color, which I could easily see mocked up in a space, and then got suggestions for similar colors I might like. It was a tough call, but eventually I ended up going with the Regal Select paint in platinum gray for my accent wall, then paired that with Icicle to match the white paint I already had in the room. I placed my order online and picked them up at my local shop. Then I proceeded to take everything down from my walls so I could begin painting and rearranging my space. To take down the Besta shelving unit I had mounted on the wall, I had to be resourceful. I ordered a motorized standing desk to replace the one I had, and I decided to build this early in the process to help me take down my shelf. Then I patched my holes and gently sanded everything down. This was my first time using Benjamin Moore paint, and I was thoroughly impressed. The paint went onto the wall smoothly and covered my previous paint easily. It dried quickly, and I could tell that even with a single coat, the coverage was amazing. I could have left it there, but I decided to do a second coat for good measure. When I finished, I knew I had made the right decision because the color in the daylight looked absolutely beautiful. Once I finished painting, I revisited my original design of the room. One part I was struggling with was where to put my massive PC and where I might add storage for the things I was moving out of my old drawers. So I hit pause on the project, moved my desk around to play with other layouts, and live with it for a few days. To my surprise, I loved this new orientation facing the window, so I went back to my 3D mockup and redesigned the space with this configuration in mind. This allowed me more freedom and options on how I could use the space. Now that I was confident with my plan, I moved forward with building everything else piece by piece. It took about 2 weeks to get the right items and live with them for a while to make sure they truly fit the office. The central part of my new setup is my desk. Recently, my friends over at Ergonoffice released new wood finishes of their products, including solid white oak. They sent their sway desk to me, which was a perfect addition to my home office because all of the wood in here is the same species. This is a motorized sit-stand desk which gives me plenty of room to work on at 72 by 30 inches and has 2 programmable settings for standing and sitting. I like to switch between the 2 throughout the day to keep my energy flowing. I also got a few accessories to go along with it. First is this neat filing cabinet, also in white oak, which I use for important documents. Underneath the desk is a cable management system and a power strip which has allowed me to control and route all of my cables neatly out of sight. No dangling wires, no hideous mess. All you need are a few cable ties and a little bit of time. Also underneath the desk, I installed these 3D printed rack mounts to hold my MacBook Pro and hub, which is the main device I work off of. These are great because it gives me quick access to my ports while maximizing my desk space and minimizing visual clutter. For my chair, I'm still using the Lino by Herman Miller, which has held up well over years of use. Below that is a felt footrest, which I bought to help me sit upright and comfortable. Moving on to the top of my desk, I installed this white monitor arm by Ergotron, which is heavy duty for large displays and is minimal in design. Mounted on that is my Asus ProArt 34-inch monitor, which is color calibrated for all of my video work. With this arm, the monitor can be moved in a wide range of directions and be rotated and tilted to your preference. For my keyboard and mouse, I'm still using the same MX set from Logitech. These sit on top of a light gray felt mat from Grovemade, which I've been using for years. Next is my new favorite productivity tool, Analog by Ugmonk. This is my to-do list, which I fill up each week and knock out every day. It's simple, beautiful, and just works because I see it every time I sit down at my desk. Next to that is an old Echo Spot, which I use to set timers for my focus sprints throughout the day and to give voice commands to control my smart lighting. Above that is a minimal desk lamp that's dimmable and can change color temperatures from warm to cool. On the other side of my desk is my iPhone charging dock by Nomad, as well as my notepad and my favorite pen by Grovemade. Lastly on my desk is a set of Audio Engine A2 Plus speakers. I chose these because they were white, have a small footprint, and can deliver a clear sound for monitoring. Often I'll have to charge a device like my headphones, mouse, or iPad. To do that, I use this RAV Power charger, which outputs 120 watts for very quick charging. I plugged in all white cables and added a cable clip on the desk edge so I can easily access them. And for extra power access, I installed this power strip on the side of my desk. Moving over to the left side of my desk is my main storage area. To expand the overhead Besta system I had before, I bought an additional unit to sit below it. I customized this unit to have 2 drawers and 2 cabinets. To tie in the wood look I have throughout my office, I got the oak veneer worktop, which surprisingly matched very closely to my desk. I also added these solid oak legs, which were intended for an IKEA couch, but it fits the same screw mount and looks great with the setup. Once my storage was in place, I installed my pegboards, which I previously had on my other wall. And next to that, I reinstalled my white steel shelves. A few quick tips here: if you need help visualizing where things should be mounted on your wall, use painter's tape to create guides to help you see where things can line up. I learned this trick from one of my favorite DIYers, Rachel Metz. A second tip: if you have visible screws when mounting your items, you can paint the ends of them to match your material to help you hide them. The next part of this project was to tackle lighting. One thing I added a few months ago was this motorized double roller shade, which helps me control the natural light coming in. One shade allows 50% filtered light to come through, while the other is a blackout shade. This prevents most of the outside sun from leaking in when I want full control of my lighting conditions. Since I'm already in the Philips Hue ecosystem, I added a few more lights to brighten up the space and highlight some dim areas. My favorite lights in the room are these ones I added above my Besta unit. While this sounds fairly simple, it was by far one of the hardest things to figure out on this project. First, I had to run power through my walls so that I had an outlet overhead. I used a TV cable kit for this, but it was much harder to do than anticipated. Then I had to figure out how to install the light strip so it was inset and leveled with the surface. I cut some pieces of MDF and a metal track to host the light strip, then fixed them into place with a few wood screws. After all that hard work, I now had power and soft lighting overhead, as well as the ability to store extra objects in this space. With all of the major parts of my setup built, the last thing to do was to organize everything and finish styling the space. In my overhead Besta storage, I stored all of my camera gear and accessories. On top of that are a few books and magazines, which are in these beautiful mist acrylic containers from the Artifox. In the storage below are my cables, organization accessories, office supplies, and an archive of old hard drives, hardware, and sketchbooks. Above that is this stylish and stackable mist paper tray, also from Artifox, which holds my printer stock. On the wall, I use my flexible pegboard system to host my commonly used items like batteries, adapters, and writing materials. On the shelves, I have my favorite headphones and a few books which are held up by these magnetic wood pegs by the Artifox. I also have this small catch-all tray by Oakywood, which holds a few tools I use consistently throughout the day. On my wall, I mounted wooden dowels to hold my backpacks and anything else I might want to hang here in the future. One thing I added to my office, which has had a huge impact, is this diffuser. Smell is often a factor in our space that we tend to overlook, but the right scent can create a specific atmosphere in our environments. The scent I like to use is Boost by Vitruvi, because it makes it feel so fresh and inviting to come to work into my office every morning. Coming to the end of this project, I felt like the room needed a few more things overhead to finish the look. I finished my alcove with a few floating shelves, which I decorated with plants and books. Above my desk, I designed a minimal custom art piece that I printed, framed, and mounted. Finally, I installed a hanging pendant lamp, which I customized by spray painting it orange to match the accent color throughout the space. These last few changes really tied everything together. With everything completed, let's take a final look at the before and after of my home office transformation while I share my closing thoughts. Redoing my office was not something I needed to do, but designing spaces has become such a fun hobby of mine. Some guys have their classic cars to work on, and I have my home office. It's interesting how simply changing colors and the orientation of your space can have such a huge impact on your mood and energy. Ever since I transformed my office, I've had a surge of motivation and momentum on my projects. As much as I liked my original accent wall, I am loving the new color so much more. It's subtle, inviting, and elegant. One thing I was truly impressed by was the durability of this Regal Select paint. Throughout this remodeling process, I was moving things around, constantly bumping into the walls. Despite that, there aren't any visible scratches on my newly painted surfaces, which my previous paint was susceptible to. Thank you to Benjamin Moore for making this project possible, and to you, the viewer, for supporting this channel. Up next in my home office makeover series, I'll be designing and building out my tech closet and sharing more about my favorite books and accessories so we can explore the details of what's in my space. Make sure to subscribe and hit the bell icon if you'd like to follow along. I've also been posting frequent updates on my Instagram if you want to see the behind the scenes process work. If you're interested in anything you've seen here, I've left links to everything in the description below. And if you have a question, ask and I'll do my best to answer. With that out of the way, it's time to get back to work.